Up in the morning with the rising sun.
Gonna run all day till the running's done.
Gonna run all day till the running's done.
I ate my breakfast way too soon.
I ate my breakfast way too soon.
I'll be hungry before noon.
I'll be hungry before noon.
So I crawled to the galley on my knees.
I crawled to the galley on my knees.
Singing CS1.
Welcome to Roger That Chronicles, a podcast for veterans by veterans.
Thank you, everyone, for listening in today. We're pretty excited, and we're going to be covering in our podcast about veterans resources, things for families, friends, neighbors, active, reserve, those who are in the National Guard, Coast Guard. And we want to make sure that you have a lot of access to the resources that you may not know about. I'm Mike Ruffner. I'm a retired gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, infantry.
I'm Rick Prescott. I'm not a retired Marine. It's been 6 years in. I know I always get ragged for that. But anyway, 6 years in the Corps. I was an instructor at Camp Pendleton, and I was also a Marine guard, guarding our embassies overseas. So, former MSG, Marine Embassy Guard.
God bless. I am Jason Hertha, also Marine as well, too. I was a 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, 0311 Infantry Rifleman, RA. Did 2 combat tours, once in Afghanistan, the other one in Iraq, and I was with Lima Company. So, hoorah.
This is our very first episode, so we're really excited about this. We are veterans helping veterans. That's what we're all about. That's what our podcast is about. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Join in. Call us anytime you want for resources, etc. But carry on there, Mike. What do you want to talk about here?
Our first topic, we're going to talk about the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. And before we get into the discussion, is that the Air Force and the Army also have relief societies, but they're all the same thing, providing resources. So, Jason, your experience with Navy Marine Corps Relief Society?
So I really haven't had too much experience with them, but with the resources that they do provide as the Relief Society are financial assistance in education, quick assist loans, education assistance, visiting nurses, because, there are veterans that get out that may have some sort of condition where IEDs or they're getting older, and unfortunately that sort of thing happens, so they definitely need some hospice care. Budget for babies, emergency travel, disaster relief, and thrift shops.
So what about you, your experience from Navy Marine Corps Relief?
I have not utilized their services yet. However, I do remember about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a major general.
Lieutenant
A lieutenant general stopped by and visit us once, where we had where he gave like an hour-long presentation, if you remember that. And they do a lot of great things for people that are veterans, active duty. For example, he described a situation where there was an Army E3, I think it was, where the fellow had financial difficulties. They had moved, something to do with his house and so forth, and they needed a lot of money. And rather than let this kid go down the drain, the Relief Society provided them with the funds they needed. Now they had to go through certain channels, through their regimental commands and all this kind of stuff in order to get all of that. But nevertheless, that's what they did. So they keep these guys that are in a financial type of situation, they keep them afloat. And they do all sorts of things. There's family services, baby services, and you name it. They do a broad range of things for active as well as non-active military personnel. So I don't know, the Army, the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, and what you said, I think the Army has their own, the different branches have their own.
Right.
That is something, if someone is inclined to utilize those services, those are the people to go seek out that sort of service.
Right.
Well, the big thing about the Relief Society, whatever branch, it gives the first sergeant majors and commanding officers of those units a resource that's in between paydays mainly that they'll deal with. Is that you get somebody that depends on their car, they're only an E3, and they got 2 or 3 kids already popped out, and they're trying to feed them, and then the car breaks down, they can't get to work. The command element has some place to go where in most cases it's an interest-free loan, or it could be a grant. New PFC, they're barely out of high school, and next you know it, their wife pops out a little one, and they don't know anything about getting diapers and crap like that to raise their kids. So it was started out to help out, and for the active duty part, but they have rolled out outside their branches a little bit, with the reserves and things of that sort. You get somebody, for example, if they have a death in a family, well, you can't plan a death and you can't plan air transportation, but they have a mother, father, brother, sister pass away. They can go to Navy Relief to get that airfare to get them to the funeral and back.
Right.
So it's a good resource. The military depends on donations. So if anybody wants to find out more.
Is there like a certain criteria? Let's say, like, obviously somebody gets out. Is there a certain criteria that must be met
There is.
to utilize this?
There's a test to everything that they have for Navy Marine Corps Relief Society.
Okay.
So most people will turn around, especially this generation, they real good with their thumbs and their fingers and Googling on their smartphones. All you do is Google Navy Marine Corps Relief Society or Army or Air Force, depending on what branch you're in. In regards to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, the number is 800-654-8364. And there's local chapters throughout the United States. So most military major installations has an office for the Relief Societies co-located with them.
If somebody's checking out this podcast and they're unsure, they can also just get the Marine Corps Navy one, right? And I'm sure they would say, "Oh, you want to contact over here or over there."
Right.
Exactly.
And the Relief Societies, they're all connected.
Yeah.
They work together well. Each Relief Society has somebody representing, usually it's a flag officer that's like the CEO of organization after retire. And they're going to try to get you to the closest facility to get in contact and get things all sorted out as quickly as they can.
Yeah, they have a number of their own resources as well, so they can lead you in the right direction depending upon where you live.
Sure.
So
once again, with the phone number is 800-654-8364.
Right.
And by all means, Google, because that's how people are going to find out who's closest to them.
Yeah, exactly. What's cool is we didn't have this type of resource, not that I know of, during my time. Now, I served from 74 to 80.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember any of this type of resource available to us during that time. So it shows the evolution of the military.
Absolutely.
Now they're more, they have the resources for families.
Right.
They have these resources that are there, run by retired military leaders.
Yeah, I think that
so that's pretty slick.
Yeah, with people that are retired, and especially that are veterans that are running these organizations, I feel it brings a lot of comfort to a veteran to see that, because they kind of invest a little more of their trust into that sort of thing. But yeah, even when I was in and then I got out, like, I didn't know about any benefits going on. Now there's with the explosion of social media, and then there's people doing like things on YouTube where with disability benefits and all that stuff. So it really brings it into the forefront. But yeah, like even like PTSD, nobody knew what that was when I was in and getting out. It's like, what is that? And then you get these
just got a question that was texted in. Seems like there's some resources out there, but it's hard to lead a horse to water and make them drink.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all have protected freedoms. You've seen things that I would never want to see or do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, how do you get the courage to say, I need the help?
You know what? It boils down to biting the bullet.
Yep, absolutely.
It really does, because we all look. We have this crazy little bit of our personality. We're tough. We can do anything.
Especially ingrained since boot camp. You gotta hard charging.
Yeah,
which is
and-
great, but
Yeah, during my time it was like suck it up, Buttercup.
right.
you know,
same,
and,
same here. Grab a
so-
straw, put it on the ground, and suck it up.
Right. So you eat your pain and suffer in silence.
Sure.
Yep.
Well-
And but really though, a lot of times when we talk about, like you just mentioned PTSD, and I'm
Yeah.
not jumping on that yet,
Right.
but it's almost anything. Like, darn man, I can't buy Pampers. I don't have enough money. I'm broke. And
Right.
now you have a family issue, and those type of things they build up. The next thing you know, you get a divorce. During my time, 93% of military personnel, at least in the Marine Corps,
Mhm.
were divorced within 2 years.
That sounds about right.
Well, yeah, but I could also consider that 80% of the Marine Corps back when you were and I were in the Corps, they weren't even married to begin with. It was almost all,
Yeah.
they were all
Yeah.
single. But the biggest thing is when you both mentioned that you didn't know anything about this. It's been around
Yeah.
for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, for a very long
Right.
time. And the only time you're talking about young troops, usually they're going around the barracks and borrowing money to cover things.
Right.
Well, as soon as somebody that's in charge of them, like a platoon sergeant or company gunny or first sergeant, they come here, and they take them off to the side,
Right.
and they all know about these resources. It's just that the average troop doesn't know about it because all they're out there is being an Army soldier or airman or a Marine or sailor. They're swabbing the decks, whatever the case may be. They're concerned about what work they got to do. They don't.
Right.
They don't pay attention to all the big picture stuff until they get more rank coming up.
Right.
When
So-
you mentioned going into barracks and borrowing money from your buddies, usually it was like 10 for 20.
Yeah,
You remember those days?
Or
Oh, yeah.
stealing somebody's
Hey, man, can I
pizza.
borrow 10? Yeah, no heart at all.
Yeah, right.
So the thing is, and that's why we're doing this, is to turn around, get the word out there that there are things out there. In my last life, I was working as a vet rep. Vets don't come in there at the unemployment office looking for a job because they don't want to ask for help. They'll just go in newspaper. Of course, the newspaper doesn't have crap anymore. And even if they have jobs in there, they're crappy jobs that nobody wants to work with.
Yeah.
And they don't until they go down for the third time and they're at that point or already homeless or getting ready to be homeless. Then they come in and say, I need help. And then that's what we're here for. We're trying to prevent that from happening. But when it does happen, also get the answers to the problems so we can get them back on the right track.
I think that's why we chose this topic is to bring awareness to everybody that, hey, there are organizations out there. Your military personnel, once you get out, you have no clue. You're trying to reinvent yourself in the civilian community, or even you're transitioning from one base to another and have no clue the resources that are out there to make these things a little bit easier for you to carry on your life and some sort of consistency. The thing is that those resources are there, and it's a matter of looking for them or asking the questions and so forth. And you mentioned, what do you do? Quite frankly, you got to bite the bullet and say, listen, I need a little bit of help, and I can get through this. Well, you know what? You can get through this, but when you can't, you're still stuck in that mode. It's time to seek some assistance.
Right.
And it may not necessarily mean go to your commanding officer or whatever if you're active service, because you don't want to look weak and that sort of thing. I don't know what the answer is in that particular regard, but there are resources there. And I know that every military base has some sort of family services or some building there that has those resources readily available.
Right. And coming from my experience, like when you had first brought up the question, when I got out in 2008, I was pretty much, I didn't think anything was wrong at the time because, you're still in go mode, all that good stuff. And you really hadn't had time for things to decompress. And then, the quirks start coming out. Like, some people have dreams and nightmares. They avoid certain situations and places and all that stuff. So it took me a little bit. But yeah, like Rick said, you got to bite the bullet and swallow the pride a little bit, because if you don't get the help, you're going to continue to start going down this downward spiral, and you're going to fail by default. Like, either you do something, it's basically sink or swim sort of thing.
The other thing that all the branches have done, some are better than others, is that they have a transition course that is required by the Department of Defense before they get out. And within those transition courses, it's usually a week or two, depending on where it's at, is that they teach them about how to get jobs. They teach them, about the resources that are out there for housing and all these other things. The only bad part is that maybe the instructors aren't so good because they're contractors and they're dry and you put them to sleep. The other factor is that you get a young E3 or E4 and all they're looking at is that discharge paper. I get it next week and I'm out of here. I don't have to put up crap anymore.
I was
and guess
the same
what?
way.
You're not paying attention to that
Right.
class that you're supposed to be listening to until 6 months later when they came back from Iraq, they would go up to Fort McCoy, for an example, and they would teach the National Guard all this stuff. And whoever was giving that crappy class was saying, hey, you're qualified for unemployment. Well, guess what? Unemployment's good for 6 months.
Right.
And after 6 months, you don't get no more.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're out of money. And during that unemployment time period, you're actually supposed to be looking for a job.
Right.
And you didn't. And now you come see me and you want a job today. It takes more than a day to get a job.
I would just come see you in your office just to bother you all the time.
Yeah.
So.
That's because you didn't have a life.
Yeah, I didn't have a life, so I got rid of all my distractions.
So are these resources? We talked a little bit about it in the green room too, guys. Are the resources for the contractors as well, or
No.
No, those guys are pretty much left out in the cold.
Okay.
Companies like KBR, they, what he's talking about here is that modern day warfare. Now you have the military doing its role, and rather than having a bunch of Marine cooks cooking in the chow halls, they hire civilians in order to do that sort of thing.
Right.
And rather than having Marines more to tea, your money, your pay, your resources, your missiles, beans, bullets, and bandages on trucks going in convoys from one location in Iraq to another, you have civilian drivers operating those vehicles and protecting them are military personnel, tanks and air, etc. And so those civilian contractors, they made a lot of money.
Sure.
They made great money. And if they stayed over there any more than a year, it was tax-free. So they might make, $100 grand working in a warehouse, never come home for a couple of years, and they bring home what they made, no taxes and everything else. So it was great. But a lot of these people got killed, and they were sent home and buried.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people came back with PTSD because they were they got hit by IEDs and so forth. And guess what? They just came back to nothing.
Right.
It's kind of like World War II with the Merchant Marines.
Yeah, exactly.
They were civilian contractors. The Navy scarfed them up to transport stuff, but when they came back, they didn't rate any military benefits because they were just there to make sure the ships floated from one point to another. And then that's what KBR and Blackwater and all these other groups out there. The thing is, they have a lot of veterans that got out of the service and they went over there, so they actually were qualified before they went in.
Right.
It's just the people that came straight off the street to go over there.
Yeah.
But that's why they got to pay the big bucks. You know.
Right.
Yeah, I got a buddy of mine that I linked back up with when I was in vacation in Florida. I hadn't seen him in 2006, and he's still doing like those types of Blackwater, organizations and private contracting and stuff. You said this go around is his last one and all that stuff, but there's a lot of that stuff going on. So
I had a younger brother, Stan.
Yeah.
He served over in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
He's been out of the Navy since the 70s, about 80 or what.
Mm-hmm.
But now he went over to Cape with KBR.
Right.
That's what he was doing.
Wow.
He was managing convoys and so forth.
Yeah.
And the things, just hearing him talk, sitting around, over pizza or what, hearing his stories, it's exactly the same as you would hear from any other combat-related veteran.
Right.
The IEDs.
Oh yeah.
50 caliber machine guns going across your bullets going across your windshield.
Been through an IED or two, and those things,
of,
those are not fun. You never.
They
expect
saw a lot of stuff. They experienced a lot of things, and they
Right.
lost friends.
Yep.
And they come back with literally no resources at all.
Yeah.
He came back home, and what does he do? Goes right to work, look for a job, reinventing himself.
Right.
And so that's the sad part about it is I am unaware of any civilian-based resource for those.
That could be a different show.
I think didn't the Merchant Marines, after about 20, 25 years or so,
We're probably talking about something we can't.
Sorry?
We don't have any information to talk about that today.
Yeah. So, but anyway, fascinating.
No, absolutely.
Well, there's, when we talk about everybody in general, and it also includes people that are in the military community, is even or Blackwater, they get out. Department of Labor's got a crap load of programs for getting people, whether getting out of prison or if they're looking for a job. There's a lot of resources already out there that everybody can use. It's just a matter of taking the time, Googling what you're looking for, and you'll eventually find what you can do to solve the problem. And it's the same thing with state agencies. That you got anything with veterans, each state has their own Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
And then the Department of Labor works with them with the unemployment side of the house, where they have job training for everybody. It just depends on what they need.
But you know what I find locally, just here, McHenry, Illinois. Who was that old fella in Woodstock? I think it was, or was it Wonder Lake? It was 85, 87-year-old guy, still working, and he's working at nighttime as a security guard. Very little money, hardly anything coming in for his retirement and that sort of thing is concerned. But here he was, his house was completely dilapidated. His roof was caving in, the walls, the insulation was rotted.
Wow.
And his yard was completely overtaken by brush and so on. And the next thing you know, we've got trees about ready to fall on his home. And what do? We contacted Habitat for Humanity. And next thing you know, they seconded us, about 30 of us, I think. And within a day or two, they were able to pull the resources from Home Depot, and I don't know if I'm allowed to mention these other organizations and all that, but from Rubicon and from even, you mentioned Country Donuts a little while ago. They came out and they had Texas Roadhouse came out with food for everybody.
I can definitely see them doing
that.
And
in about 2 days, they rebuilt his whole home. They ripped out everything, redid his roof. They had guys from Trees R Us up there ripping apart the trees. By the time we left, I turned around and looked around. I'm like, this is not the same house.
Right.
And that old gentleman that was poor as a church mouse was happy as a clam. His whole life was now back to some form of comfort that he didn't have before.
Right.
And that's local resources alone.
Absolutely.
And it took veterans to get together to help veterans.
Right.
And pulling together the resources that are available to us. And those are resources that I don't think people even think about or talk about.
No. And the thing too, like you said, is that we can't wait for things to get so bad to where, for example, you're seeing this house and then the security guard thing, and then vets come in, got to bite that bullet a little bit, because coming from my experience when it came to utilizing the resources, like I have a little bit of a bit of experience with using local stuff, and then also the statewide stuff, like obviously the VA or Department of Veteran Affairs, and then even the VAC. But that's the thing is, find a service officer that knows their stuff and that you feel comfortable with. And the one that I was working with, and it really it doesn't matter what organization you go to, just as long as they get the job done, because they'll guide you through the process of disability claims and all that stuff. And there's a lot of veterans where they feel like, oh, well, I'm taking stuff away from another veteran. Like, no, you're not. There is so much funding for it. It's ridiculous, but you are deserving of those benefits, We
also have like the Semper Fi Fund.
Right.
As well. And more about the Semper Fi Fund than just about any of us, but we know it exists. We know what it does. And so on. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. The Semper Fi Fund was started because of the Iraq War. It hasn't even hit 20 years yet, and they want to provide services to the Marines, but more importantly to the family members of those who were killed, to expedite them getting things as straight as they can, to bring them closer to normal. When the Marine has been killed, you can't fix that, but those who are losing their limbs. Whatever the problem may be, the Marine or any service member, it's not just them that are suffering, it's the family members. And that's why you got all these different other programs that are providing housing, service dogs, things of that sort, depending on what goes on. So, we're going to get into the Wounded Warrior, but right now, Semper Fi Fund, all the Marines know where that's at. They've heard it because they were stationed at the Marine Corps, so they know how to find them. And their thing is they have a quick process to expedite the help that's needed for them. They got it down to a pretty good science to find out what you think you need. You go in there and you're missing a leg, and okay, you need a prosthetic. Well, VA and the Navy is going to get you a prosthetic to start with, but that's your immediate need. But they also are aware of your long-term need. They're because you're thinking about that missing leg. They're thinking about where you're going to be at 10, 20 years from now to make sure everything goes in place. And that's where between them and the other organizations, even the VA will provide a grant to redo housing. If you need a wheelchair, now you got to have a wheelchair accessible door. You got to have a ramp. How do you get to the kitchens and use those services? That's what's good about these organizations. That they've done it so much, they already know the answers to your problem before you get to your problem.
Right.
Well, you mentioned that most Marines know about it, where it is, but just for those that don't, I've got an address here. It's 825 College Boulevard, Suite 102, Oceanside, California, 92057. And it looks like that's a tax-exempt 501c3 organization. So in case anybody wants to donate to it and that sort of thing, they can do that.
Well, to throw out a shameless plug for the veterans organization is that when we go into combat, we usually link up with locals there because they know what's going on the ground. Those who have been, even in Vietnam, the new Marines will get with the old Marines that have been in country for a while to, get the lay of the land and, find out how the local people are and what to look for. It's one of those cliches we use in the grunts. If it looks like an ambush, smells like an ambush, it's a freaking ambush. Well,
Yep.
The thing is, we do that for combat. We do that as part of our military training to find out what's going on there. It's just like when the Navy, they just don't pull up to a port. They've already have contacts in that port before the ship even gets ready to drop anchor. They already know what's going on. Well,
Do they do that?
yeah, they do that. So
I've never seen the Navy do that. I see them
No.
bump into those things.
yeah, but yeah,
This is no word of a lie. The USS Roosevelt came to Halifax, Nova Scotia several years
Of course,
ago.
Canada.
Oh, it was. I was up there. I
Of course,
was there.
Canada up there.
And so they decided, hey, we're going to pull up alongside. We're going to pull up right up to the big dock.
Sure.
And right at the dock, just like 30 feet away, there's this big brick building. It was Pier 21 or something like that. Pier
Mhm.
1, Pier 21. Big pier, beautiful warehouse. And here comes this big deck. And they said, whoa, boys, pull. And here's the deck. Goes right into the building. And took
Oh, no.
off. I bet you the first top 2 floors of that building, the deck just took
well,
off.
let me ask this question though. Was there tugboats with them?
I don't remember seeing tugboats.
Okay, in most cases, the Navy has tugboats, and it's not the Navy's fault. It's that Canadian that was driving the tugboat.
Oh.
So it's your people's then, eh?
You know what was hilarious? After watching the building fall
Let me take the
down,
blame off the Navy there.
Right.
after the building fell down and all the bricks stopped falling and so forth.
Right.
And here comes the the deck, how they lower it and so on. They had a Marine band up there. they were bugling and everything else. And I'm sitting there going,
Down with the ship or
"Oh,
down with
my
the building. The building is the Titanic and it's going down. So, but for
but going back to the different veterans organizations, we got the Marine Corps League, and we're all proud about talking about that.
Right.
But you and we have specific rules. You don't have, as long as you've been to boot camp and in the Corps for 90 days, you have a honorable discharge, you can be in the Marine Corps League. And if you're an FMF corpsman or chaplain, you can do that. Now they also had the Navy League, which is specific to the Navy, and of course Marines can be part of that as well. And then you got
I
the
did
fleet.
not know that. Wow.
And yeah, that's another hidden
All
group. You got the Fleet Reserve Association, which is like a spinoff of the Navy League.
Sure.
And that's anybody with the maritime services can be part of that, Coast Guard and everything else.
Gotcha.
You got AMVETS, which in this state, it seems to be very heavy with Army and National Guard.
Right.
So their rules fits that. You got the American Legion. If you served during time of conflict, you don't have to be in the combat zone unless they modify the rules a little bit to keep their membership up.
Right.
You can be a member there, and it doesn't make any difference what branch you're in. And then you got the VFW, and of course theirs is that you have to be in the combat zone to qualify. Those are probably the majority of the groups. Like in the state of Illinois, the largest organization is the American Legion, followed by the VFW,
Okay.
AMVETS, and then the Marine Corps League,
Gotcha.
and then everyone else trickles down. But
Also
people,
the Polish League of American Vets.
Well,
as well.
Those are there's probably one or two organizations in the state, but at Polish Legion of American Veterans, after World War II time frame, I guess Polish people of Polish descent all got together and decided to have their own group. But there's an Italian war vets, there's a Jewish war vets. There's quite a few of them that people don't even know about because, one, people that started are quite old and they don't spend a lot of time. It's just like in our Marine organization, there's a Chosen War. So anybody that was in Chosen War in Korea.
Right.
And, you have, different organizations and offshoots of groups within
the benefits of joining, and I argued this point for 20 years or better. Why do I want to join a veterans group? It's a bunch of drunks get together, tell a bunch of lies at the bar,
Right.
blah, blah. And I struggled with that until I actually went to one. And I'll tell you, it was an experience. For me, the experience was this. I found out that, I'm not an arsehole. These guys have the same personality I
Because so you're not then.
They curse and swear, they badger
They're all
each
the same.
other. I found out that their personality, the way they talked and everything was just like me.
Yep.
I went, oh, wait a minute. And all of a sudden, it took a matter of like a half an hour. And I realized, hey, man, I'm home. And it was funny. There's something psychological about that, I suppose. But you could tell when you're among the real deal. And I've been a member of the Marine Corps League now since 2014. I don't mean to plug it, but in the same token,
sure you do.
What I'm
Always.
what I'm suggesting here is any military branch join. I'm talking about the individuals, the resources that this organization had given me was so broad brushed. For example, when I was unemployed for a brief amount of time, I sought assistance from one of our members. I think it was you. At the Illinois, what do you call it?
Department of Employment Security.
Yeah, that one. The unemployment office. I keep calling
Acronyms, some acronyms.
But in that,
Yeah.
next thing you know, I didn't know how to write a resume. And I'm thinking of most people coming out of the military or law enforcement or whatever. They know who they are, but they can't describe their transferable skills into the corporate community.
Right, you got to reword what you're doing. You can't be like, "Well, I'm a great weapons put together
I know.
stripper rifle." They're like, what? How does this translate into the real world? So,
I used to talk to employers about that. They would always look at, and for a while there, the Navy was the easiest one to get jobs because they're on a floating city. Think about it.
Yeah,
Everybody's got to be able to do all kinds of stuff. So they were easy for the employers to understand, to flip them into jobs because, the guys in the engine room down there, they're mechanics. Yeah. They work on an engine all day long. That's diesel. The only thing is an employer's got to kind of describe things and tell them what the secret is to understand what they did. But, then it came to the point with the Army and in the Marine Corps. It's like, somebody works on a tank. Guess what? That tank's diesel. So how much you need somebody to fix your trucks? What's the big deal between a tank and a truck? It's still the same thing. It's a diesel engine. There you go. If you get somebody that works repairing artillery or Amtracs and stuff, and you got a lot of hydraulics, guess what? Your machinery in that warehouse that you manufacturing has hydraulics. What do you think the learning curve is for that person that did it for the service? And guess what? He did it under combat conditions. Can do that. Kraft Foods, the guy from HR told me he's looking for Navy submarines.
Oh yeah.
And you know why?
Mm-hmm.
You know how many
dolphin pin?
Nope, not at all. It has nothing to do with the pin. It has to do with when Kraft's manufacturing goes down, they got to calculate how much more money they lose per second. And the way he looks at it, if they're on a submarine and something goes bad, how fast are they going to fix that submarine?
Well, I did a tour of the USS Pennsylvania, I think it is. It's a nuclear sub. And in that, this guy told me that everyone on board that vessel knows how to fix all of the generators. They know how to fix the diesel engines. They know how to work on the nuclear power plant. They know how to do missiles. They know how to do everything, from forward to aft, every nut and bolt. These guys, in order to get that dolphin pin on there, and it takes about 2.5 years or so to get that. They have to learn everything there is to know about that ship, and they become experts even with the copier machine.
Right.
And so I think that's the big reason why these guys come at a high cost.
Right.
I knew a guy when I worked at the service center down in Broadview. We had this big oxygen system, very complicated, very dangerous. I mean, that thing blows up, and three city blocks gone. And who did it? A former Navy submariner was our guy. And I asked him, what made you do this? You know? And so anyway, just phenomenal.
Well, you know, and then it goes back to, we're going to throw Jason on the bus here, but
Sure.
the veterans organizations tell people things that the average person is not paying attention to. You know, and Jason, how long did it take before you went back to the VA to kind of get things more normal? And would you have done it if we didn't kind of encourage you without pushing you over the cliff?
There was, when I first got out, shameless plug again, I got in the Marine Corps League back in 2009, and then I kind of floated out because I'm like, whatever. And I had, other priorities going on. Well, drinking and all that stuff, which I quit. But I would do like these little spurts going back to the VA, and then I would lose hope and all that stuff. But when I came back to the area where I'm living at now, came in contact with one of the members at the Marine Corps League, that's where indirectly I was being, there was a sense of accountability being held. So of course they're going to push you to do better and all that stuff. And my mindset too is, be solution orientated. So getting back, working on my benefits, getting that, underway, and even touching base with Rick with the resume and all that stuff. There's guys where if they're infantry, they're like, well, how does my skills relate into the real world? Well, you can take anything, reword it, and make it sound, top notch. So for example, infantry guys and gals now and all that good stuff, that is supreme leadership skills in thinking on the fly and knowing how to take orders. So if you can reword that, keeping it simple, problem solving is huge. And when an employer knows that you've been tested under severe conditions, even doing the simplest task when there is stress being around, it's going to seem like an Einstein problem. But, relating into those combative fields, there is numerous amounts of opportunity. You just have to know how to reword it and be aware of what you were actually taught. You're in charge of multi-million-dollar equipment if you were, well, tanks are no longer around anymore, but you're, small unit leadership, and you are in charge of that sort of machinery.
If I might, based on that, my personal experience in that particular regard was going to IDES, meeting a gentleman who was a psychiatrist, and he looked at the font. I mean, little details that no one would ever look at, But once he helped me figure out how to word the resume, how to use the different marketing strategies and so forth in that resume, I had already put out like 100 resumes, not a call. Circle file it. But once I got that resume put together, I did not get an interview. That resume, the resume itself, that resource that was brought in as a result of being a member of a veterans group that took me there to meet this guy. And that resource right there got me into every interview imaginable. I had interviews with hospitals, you name it. And with that resume, resume was that good.
And keeping it short and sweet too, because I didn't even realize this when I went to culinary school. Shameless plug, over at Chemical College in the city. They gave a resume writing class, and I was like, wow, I was really making it overcomplicated, because the person looking at the resume is going to look at it for like 30 seconds. So you got to make it like right to the point. You have to have that sweet spot, of painting that picture with, the proper amount of words going on. So,
well, and when they got that resume, people got to realize that's the first check. If they call you for an interview, that means there's something on the resume that got their attention. But most of veterans that do not get a job sabotage themselves when they get face to face. I know one. I know one individual. He'll swear up and down that nobody wants to hire veterans. Well, that's not a true statement.
Oh, that's not true at all. Good Lord.
he's actually causes his own problems by the way he talks. So, when I would go out in job fairs, I knew, and I had veterans that go out there, I'd watch to see how they talk, because what they tell me face to face when we're getting things ready is not the same thing that we actually, what he actually will do with an employer.
Right.
So, a lot of time it's their fault. And they don't realize, and of course, in their mind, it's not their fault.
I would get hired, with my resume and stuff, doing security at Rivers Casino, all this stuff, hand my stuff in within like a couple weeks, I'm getting calls back already. So again, yeah, it's really how you present yourself. But
so I guess next time we're going to talk about
Transitioning.
yep, we'll talk about transitioning out and what struggles people have had, or what they've noticed with their experiences on getting out. So we briefly touched on TAPS.
I think
and all that
everybody
stuff,
knows once you get out of the military, you have this very tight knit community,
Right.
where you have this dedication and loyalty to one another. I mean, you lay your life down for that person right next to you.
Absolutely.
And they will you. Once you get out of that tightness and in the civilian community,
Right.
where you hear everybody screaming and hollering about Democrats and Republicans, and everybody hates each other, and racism, and you name it, it's all these divisive type of things, and all of a sudden we come out of the military like in shock. And so it took me a couple of years
Right.
to get back into the flow and understanding how to fit into this.
Right.
And I think that would be a great topic for our next.
Yeah. And when getting out too, like I struggled with alcoholism for numerous years.
Right.
So with definitely next episode, we'll definitely cover some of the experience that I've had with that. Hence, I no longer drink anymore, but that's a big one that veterans deal with. So,
well,
with
and
transitioning.
to kind of throw
Just addiction.
Throw-
itself.
Oh yeah, addiction itself. Yeah.
Rick under the bus.
Let's go throw
Most
under the
people.
bus again.
Well, what else is new?
Well, the thing is, most people during Vietnam went to Canada before they went in. He went to
did the
Canada after.
role reversal.
I'll never forget this. I'll never forget my brother Ray went off to the Gulf War. He was in the Army,
Mhm.
and I got activated. He was in the Reserves. I went, "You did?" He goes, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "Hey, I moved to Canada. Come get me." You're a little draft dodger.
Oh, that's funny. That's hilarious.
Great stuff.
This is
Again,
awesome.
Yeah, again, for resources that people may need, it's been scrolling on the bottom of the screen, but 800-654-8364. And that just kind of opens up everything and gives you a place to go to get the information.
Okay, we're not on anymore, right?
No, you're on air still.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We got to wrap it up. So.
Yeah. So we've got to wrap it up. We got about 2 minutes left in the first show here, which is absolutely fantastic. And the reason that we're putting this show together again is
To help other veterans.
that's it.
No matter
Absolutely.
what branch they're in, share the ideas.
Yeah.
In future episodes, we hope that we'll get feedback of people, and before we say anything, we want to make sure that we're pretty correct. We don't want to be a sea lawyer. We don't want to be a barracks lawyer.
Right.
We want to be as truthful as we can, but we're not experts in what we do. We're pretty good at it, but we're not experts.
Right.
But we want everybody to go to people that really know what's going on, because there's a lot of people that talk out their tail end and they don't know crap.
Right. And just with,
Well, that's mainly what I do here at 21.6.
Sure. and also too,
we
we've
didn't want
been-
to say that,
Right. We've also had certain experiences too. Like for me, when it came to getting the disability benefits, like I have a pretty good knowledge on that, but everyone has like their own little key experience, right? But yeah, I mean, I'm not a whiz at any of that by any means, but I can just relay.
Well, I look forward to people calling in, emailing us,
Yeah.
all of that, contacting us. Give us your view.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience.
Yeah.
Because your experience should be shared with everybody.
Yeah. Your voice needs to be heard.
It needs to be heard. And that's what we're here for.
Yeah. You guys got a website,
So,
email address?
We do. Our website is McHenry County Marine Corps League.com.
Yep.
And you can email us at McHenryCountyMCL@gmail.com.
Awesome.
And you can Google us too if if that works.
Or on Facebook.
Yeah, we're all
That's
over the
it.
place.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
And shortly we'll have a link on our website here at 21.6 that'll shoot them right over to where you're at. So if they're looking and they're listening to a show or the podcast, they'll have that link right over to you guys too.
And in the future, you can expect me to get thrown under the bus a lot.
Yeah.
He actually wears a T-shirt with the target on it.
And a bus on the back of his shirt. So.
With the tracks.
All right. Hey, that's going to do it for this episode of Roger That Chronicles, a podcast for veterans by veterans. We can't thank you enough for joining us. And again, for any information you guys want to be on the show, any listener out there, we want to hear your stories. That website and email address one more time.
It's McHenry County Marine Corps League. And what email is mchenrycountymcl@gmail.com. And we want to thank everybody for watching.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Roger that.
Thank you.